The emergency signal burst through space like a scream in the darkness. It traveled for days across the vast emptiness between stars, carrying within it the terror of an entire world. When it finally reached the Galactic Council's main communication hub on Nexus Station, the automated systems immediately flagged it as a Priority 1 distress call. Commander. Zathera was drinking her morning stimulant when the alert sirens began wailing throughout the station. The tall, blue-skinned Nexari officer dropped her cup and rushed to the communications center. Her forearms moved quickly across the control panels as she pulled up the incoming transmission. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the face of a being unlike any she had seen before. The creature had pale, almost translucent skin and large dark eyes that seemed to hold the weight of the universe. Its mouth moved in patterns that the universal translator struggled to interpret. Please, ... Anyone who can hear this message, we are the Zalani of Thesia Prime. Our world is under attack. It came from the outer darkness with ships that blot out our sun. We have no weapons. We have no armies. We are a people of peace, of art, of healing. But they do not care. The being's voice cracked with emotion. Behind him, Zathera could see other Zalani moving frantically. Some were carrying what looked like children. Others held strange, beautiful objects that must have been their artwork, or religious items. The Krex Dominion surrounds our world. Their bioships are like living nightmares. They demand our complete surrender. They want to make us slaves. They say we have 3 days to decide, but we know what our choice must be. We will never bow to them.
We will die.
As free beings. The transmission grew weaker as interference began to corrupt the signal. The Zalani's image flickered and distorted. We send this message to all civilized worlds. Remember us. Remember that we tried to live in peace. Tell the universe that the Zalani existed, and that we loved beauty more than we feared death. The signal cut out, leaving only static and silence. Zathera stared at the empty hologram for several moments before her training kicked in. She immediately forwarded the message to the Galactic Council's emergency assembly system. Within an hour, representatives from dozens of worlds were gathering in the Great Hall of Nexus Station. The council chamber was a massive dome that could hold thousands of beings from hundreds of different species. Today it buzzed with nervous energy as delegates took their seats. Some floated in specialized atmosphere bubbles. Others required different gravity settings or temperature controls. The diversity of galactic civilization was on full display, but for once they all shared the same concern. Senior Counselor Vex T called the emergency session to order. The ancient being had served on the council for over 2 centuries and had seen many crises. His species, the Altari, were known for their wisdom and calm judgment. But today, even he seemed shaken. Fellow representatives, Vex T began, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber through advanced sound systems. We have received a distress call from a world called Desha Prime. The inhabitants, who call themselves the Zalani, are facing extinction at the hands of the Krex Dominion. A wave of concerned murmurs rippled through the assembly. Everyone knew about the Krex. They were one of the most aggressive species in the galaxy, technology that turned living creatures into weapons of war. Their bioships could grow and adapt during battle, making them nearly impossible to defeat using conventional tactics. "What is the current status of our military forces?" asked Ambassador Kelton from the Centauri Republic. His people maintained one of the largest fleets in the galaxy, but they were currently engaged in their own territorial disputes. General Thorn of the Altair Federation stood up. The stocky, bear-like being's fur was graying with age, but his voice was still strong. "Our main battle fleet is 3 sectors away, dealing with raiders on the frontier. Even if we recalled them immediately, it would take at least 2 weeks to reach the Shea Prime. From what we know of Krex tactics, that world will be completely subjugated by then." "What about the other major powers?" Vex T asked. One by one, the military leaders gave their reports. The crystal beings of Nexus Prime had no military capability at all, having evolved beyond the need for physical conflict. The gas giant dwellers of Horin could not survive in standard atmospheric conditions, making them useless for planetary defense. The energy beings of Pulsara existed on a different dimensional plane and rarely interfered in physical world conflicts. The Council had the combined might of hundreds of worlds at their disposal, but none of it could be brought to bear quickly enough to save the Zilani. "This is unacceptable," declared Ambassador Yixta from the Healer Coalition. Her species had dedicated themselves to preserving life throughout the galaxy. "We cannot simply stand by while an entire civilization is destroyed." "What do you suggest?" asked General Thorne. "The Kreks chose their timing well. They know our forces are scattered and our response time is limited. This is exactly the kind of situation they specialize in exploiting." The debate continued for hours. Some suggested diplomatic solutions, but everyone knew the Kreks had never been swayed by words. Others proposed economic sanctions, which would take months to implement and would not help the Zilani in their current crisis. As the arguments grew more heated and the solutions more desperate, Councillor Vexti noticed that one member of the Assembly had remained silent throughout the entire discussion. Ambassador Thalavin from the Outer Rim Trading Consortium rarely spoke during council sessions. His people were merchants and traders, not warriors or diplomats. Ambassador Thalavin Vexti said, bringing the chamber to quiet attention. "Your consortium has extensive contacts throughout the Rim territories. Do you have any suggestions?" Thin, insectoid being clicked his mandibles thoughtfully before responding. "There are ... rumors, Senior Counselor. Stories that most of us have dismissed as impossible." "What kind of stories?" "About 50% of your standard years ago, a new species appeared in the Outer Rim. They called themselves humans, they claimed. To come from a world in the far galactic edge, beyond the known trade routes, several delegates shifted uncomfortably. The Outer Rim was known to be dangerous, filled with failed colonies, and worse things that civilized species preferred not to think about." "What makes these humans significant?" asked General Thorne. "Their homeworld," Thalavon continued, "is classified as a Class 12 death world." The chamber fell completely silent. A Class 12 classification was theoretical. It represented a world so hostile to life that most scientists believed intelligent species could not possibly evolve there. The radiation levels, gravity variations, atmospheric toxicity, and predator density would kill most known life forms within hours. "That's impossible," said Ambassador Kelton. "No intelligence could develop under those conditions." "And yet," Thalavin replied, "they exist. I have seen their ships. I have traded with their representatives. They are real, and they are ... different." "Different how?" Vexti asked. "They do not think like us. Their technology is crude by our standards, but it works in ways ours does. Not. Their ship designs prioritize survival over efficiency. Their social structures are built around conflict resolution rather than conflict avoidance. And they're representative to our consortium." Thalavin paused, as if searching for the right words. "She negotiates like someone who has faced death many times and is not afraid of it." The senior counselor leaned forward in his chair. "Are you suggesting we contact these humans?" "I am suggesting that if anyone in this galaxy might be capable of responding to the Zilani crisis in time, it would be beings who evolved on a world that tries to kill them every day." The debate that followed was brief but intense. Some delegates argued that contacting an unknown death world species was too dangerous. Others pointed out that they had no other options. In the end, desperation won over caution. "Very well, Vexti," announced Ambassador Thalavin. "Please contact your human representative immediately. Explain the situation and ask if they are willing to assist." As the council session ended and delegates began filing out of the chamber, many wondered if they had just made a terrible mistake. They were about to discover what happened when a death world species decided to get involved in galactic politics. On Thessia Prime, Zilani continued their preparations for the end of their world, not knowing that their cry for help had been heard by beings who understood exactly what it meant to fight for survival. The quantum communication signal reached the human diplomatic vessel New Horizon while it was docked at Kepler Station. Ambassador Lisa Grant was in the middle of reviewing trade agreements when her personal communicator began flashing with an emergency priority code she had never seen before. Lisa was a woman of average height, with short brown hair and sharp green eyes that seemed to take in everything around her. She had been humanity's representative to the Outer Rim Trading Consortium for 3 years. In that time, she had learned that most alien species saw humans as curiosities rather than threats. They thought humans were just another primitive species trying to find their place in galactic civilization. They were very wrong about that. Lisa accepted the incoming transmission and found herself looking at Ambassador Thalavan's insectoid face. The trader's usual calm demeanor was replaced by obvious agitation. Ambassador Grant Flevin said without his normal pleasantries, "The Galactic Council has an emergency situation. A species called the Zilani is facing extinction. Dominion has invaded their homeworld, and the Council's military forces cannot respond in time." Lisa leaned back in her chair and listened as Thalavan explained the situation. Her expression remained neutral, but inside her mind was already working through possibilities and calculations. When he finished, she was quiet for several moments. "You want humanity to get involved in a galactic military crisis?" she said finally. "May I ask why you think we would be capable of helping?" Thalan's mandibles clicked nervously. "Your species comes from a Deathworld ambassador. The Council believes that might give you certain advantages in dealing with aggressive species, like the Krex." Lisa almost smiled at that. Only they knew just how much of an advantage humanity really had. "I'll need to contact Earth Command immediately." "How much time do the Zilani have? Perhaps 2 days before the Krex begin their final assault?" "Understood. I'll get back to you within 6 hours." Lisa ended the transmission and immediately activated her ship's most secure communication system, the Quantum Entanglement Communicator. Could reach Earth instantaneously, but it was reserved for only the most critical situations. This definitely qualified. The signal traveled across space and reached Terra Command in the Rocky Mountains of North America. Admiral Jake Morrison was reviewing patrol reports when his aide informed him of the incoming priority transmission from the diplomatic corps. Morrison was a man in his 60s with gray hair and scars on his hands from his younger days as a Marine. He had been in charge of humanity's military expansion into space for the past decade, and he had spent that time preparing for exactly this kind of situation. "Ambassador Grant," Morrison said, as Lisa's image appeared on his screen. "What's the situation?" Lisa quickly explained the Zilani crisis and the Galactic Council's request for assistance. Morrison listened without interruption, occasionally making notes on his tablet. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Admiral," Lisa said, "the aliens think we might be able to help because we come from a dangerous world. They have no idea what we're really capable of, do they?" Morrison's weathered face showed the hint of a grin. "No, they don't. Been the point all along." He looked at something off-screen, probably checking military deployment charts. "Tell them we'll help. Tell them our ships will be at Thesha Prime in 60 hours. 60 hours? Lisa couldn't hide her surprise. "Sir, that's impossible. Our fastest ships would need at least a week to reach that system," Ambassador Morrison said. "We've been preparing for this day since we first learned we weren't alone in the universe. It's time to show our new galactic neighbors what humans are really about." After ending the transmission with Lisa, Morrison activated the base-wide communication system. His voice echoed through every corridor and office in the massive underground complex. "All department heads to the command center immediately. Authorization code Alpha Black. This is not a drill." Within minutes, the command center was filled with humanity's top military leaders. General Patricia Hayes from the Marine Corps, Admiral Robert Clark from the Space Navy, and Director Kevin Stone from Intelligence all took their seats around the holographic display table. "Gentlemen, ladies," Morrison began, "we just received our first request for military assistance from the galactic community. A peaceful species called the Zilani is about to be wiped out by something called the Krex Dominion. The Galactic Council's forces can't respond in time." General Hayes leaned forward. "What's our response, sir?" "We're going to show them what happens when you threaten innocent people in front of humans," Morrison replied. "Activate Operation Ghost Fleet." For the past 15 years, humanity had been playing a careful game with the galactic community. They had presented themselves as a young, relatively primitive species just beginning to explore space. Their visible ships were simple cargo haulers and passenger vessels. Their technology appeared to be centuries behind galactic standards. But that was all carefully crafted deception. The real human fleet had been hiding in the shadows, using stealth technology that the aliens couldn't detect. Ships had been positioned throughout human space and beyond, waiting for the day when they would be needed. That day had finally come. Admiral Clark pulled up the deployment charts. We have 37 combat vessels in position to respond. The heavy cruiser Retribution, under Captain Ben Carter, is closest to the target system. The destroyer squadrons under Commander Katie Walsh can provide escort. "What about ground forces?" asked General Hayes. Colonel Ryan Murphy's rapid response. "Battalion is aboard the assault carrier Freedom. They can be deployed for surface operations if needed." Director Stone activated his intelligence displays. "Sir, our deep space monitoring stations have been tracking Krek's fleet movements for months. They typically use bioships that can adapt during combat, but they're not prepared for human tactics." Morrison nodded. "The aliens think warfare is about honor and civilized conduct. They're about to learn that humans fight to win, not to look good doing it." Within 3 hours of receiving the emergency call, the Ghost Fleet began emerging from hiding. Ships that had been running silent behind asteroids activated their engines. Vessels that had been camouflaged within nebulae dropped their stealth fields. Strike craft that had been disguised as mining equipment revealed their true nature. Captain Ben Carter stood on the bridge of the Retribution as his ship came online. The heavy cruiser was nothing like the sleek, elegant vessels favored by Galactic. Civilization was built like a flying fortress, with thick armor plating and redundant systems designed to keep fighting, even after taking massive damage. "All systems green, Captain," reported his executive officer, Commander Linda Ross. "Weapon systems are fully charged. Marine contingent is ready for deployment." Carter looked out at the stars through the reinforced viewport. "Helm, set course. For Thesha Prime, maximum velocity?" "Sir," the helmsman replied, "that will put us well above safety margins for our drive systems." "Today, we're not worried about safety margins," Carter said. "Today we're worried about getting there in time to save lives." Throughout human space, similar scenes were playing out on dozens of ships. Crews that had been waiting for years were finally getting their chance to show what humanity was capable of. The ships weren't the biggest or the most advanced in the galaxy, but they had something that most alien vessels lacked. They were crewed by beings who had evolved on a world that tried to kill them every single day. Commander Katie Walsh reviewed the tactical situation from the bridge of her destroyer squadron flagship Defiant. Her ships were smaller and faster than the heavy cruisers, designed for hit-and-run attacks and close-range combat. Her crews had trained extensively in boarding actions and ship-to-ship fighting, tactics that most civilized species had abandoned. "Centuries ago," Commander her tactical officer reported, "we're receiving updates from intelligence. The Krek's bioships use living tissue for their hulls. They can regenerate damage, but they also feel pain." Walsh smiled grimly. "Then we'll give them plenty to feel." As the human fleet converged on rally points throughout space, the galactic community remained unaware of what was coming. The Krek's Dominion continued their siege of the Shah Prime, confident that no force in the galaxy could challenge them in time. On Nexus Station, Ambassador Lisa Grant contacted the Galactic Council. With humanity's response, "This is Ambassador Grant, representing the human government," she transmitted to the council chambers. "We have received your request for assistance with the Thesha Prime crisis. Be advised that the Terran Expeditionary Force is en route to the system. Estimated arrival time is 62 hours. The council members looked at each other in confusion. How could a primitive species from the Outer Rim possibly respond faster than their own military forces? They were about to find out that everything they thought they knew about humans was wrong. The Deathworlders were no longer hiding in the shadows. They were coming to fight, and they brought with them all the fury and determination of a species that had never learned how to surrender in the depths of space. The Ghost Fleet raced toward the ship Prime, carrying with them humanity's first message to the galaxy: touch our friends, and learn why Earth is called a death world. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Vesh's system with a flash of energy that lit up every sensor for light years around. The 37 ships of the Terran Expeditionary Force spread out in a formation that looked chaotic to alien observers, but followed human military doctrine perfectly. On the bridge of the Krex command bioship Devourer, War Leader Nexel studied the sensor readings with growing amusement. The new arrivals were tiny compared to his massive living vessels. His smallest bioship was 3 times larger than their biggest warship. "These are the famous Deathworlders?" Nexel asked his tactical officer. The Krex were an insectoid species with thick chitinous armor and razor-sharp claws. They had conquered dozens of worlds using their bioships, which were actually living creatures bred and modified for war. "Yes, War Leader," the tactical officer replied. 37 vessels of unknown design. Their energy signatures are unusual. Nexel clicked his mandibles in what passed for laughter among his species. "Send Subcommander Thackerus with a screening. Force. 12 bioships should be more than sufficient to crush these primitives. Once they are destroyed, we can return to the business of conquering the Zilani." The screening force detached from the main Krex fleet and moved toward the human ships. Each bioship was a living nightmare, with organic weapons that could adapt during battle and regenerative hulls that could heal from damage. They had never been defeated in open combat. That was about to change. Captain Ben Carter watched the approaching Krex ships from the bridge of the Retribution. His crew was calm and focused, each person knowing exactly what they needed to do. They had trained for this moment for years. Tactical analysis. Carter asked his weapons officer. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Davis studied her screens. 12. Hostile vessels approaching. Bioorganic construction. Energy shielding appears to be designed for standard galactic weapon types. No kinetic defense systems detected. Carter nodded. Then they're not ready for what we're about to show them. All ships. This is Retribution. Execute attack pattern Delta. Time to give these bugs a lesson in human warfare. The human fleet suddenly accelerated toward the Krex ships at a speed that should have been impossible for vessels of their size. Instead of maintaining the long-range combat distances favored by galactic civilizations, they closed to point-blank range within minutes. Subcommander Thackerus was confused by the human tactics. Why are they coming so close? Do they wish to surrender? His confusion turned to alarm when the human ships opened fire. The weapons that erupted from the human vessels were unlike anything the Krex had ever encountered. Instead of energy beams or plasma charges, the humans fired solid projectiles at tremendous velocity. Tungsten rods the size of telephone poles struck the bioships with the force of meteors. The Krex energy shields, designed to dissipate directed energy weapons, were useless against kinetic impacts. The tungsten rods punched through the living hulls of the bioships like bullets through paper. Impossible. The Karis screamed as his flagship shuddered under multiple impacts. How can such primitive weapons penetrate our defenses? The answer came in the form of nuclear warheads that detonated in carefully calculated patterns around the Krex formation. The bioships could survive in the vacuum of space, but they were not prepared for the intense radiation and electromagnetic pulses that followed. Each explosion, Lieutenant Commander Nick Rodriguez piloted his destroyer Valiant through the chaos, like a dancer moving through a ballroom. His ship was less than half the size of the smallest Krex vessel, but it was built for speed and maneuverability. He led his squadron in a series of hit-and-run attacks that left the bioships reeling. Target their weapon clusters, Rodriguez ordered his gunners. These things feel pain. Let's make sure they remember this. The human point defense systems opened up with streams of metal projectiles that filled space with deadly fragments. The Krex bioships found themselves under attack from weapons that didn't follow any civilized rules of engagement. The humans seemed to enjoy causing pain to their living vessels. Captain Amy Foster's cruiser. Sacramento demonstrated another human innovation: boarding tactics. As her ship closed with a damaged Krex bioship, armored Marines prepared for something the galaxy hadn't seen in centuries. "Breach charges ready," reported Sergeant Paul Anderson over the comm system. "Marines are locked and loaded." "Do it," Foster ordered. The human boarding craft attached to the bioships, hole-like parasites, and began cutting through the living tissue with shaped charges and industrial cutting tools. The Krex vessel screamed, its bioneural networks overwhelmed by the sensation of being cut open while still alive. Anderson led his Marines through the breach into the ship's interior. The environment was hot and humid, with organic walls that pulsed like the inside of a giant heart. Krex warriors rushed to defend their vessel, but they were not prepared for humans in powered armor. Carrying weapons designed for close combat, the Marines moved through the bioship like a virus through a bloodstream, destroying critical systems and causing maximum psychological damage. The Krex had never faced enemies who seemed to actually enjoy fighting at close range. "This corridor leads to their primary neural cluster," Anderson reported to his team. "If we can damage that, the whole ship goes down." Marines fought there, way deeper into the bioship, using grenades and flamethrowers to clear their path. The Krex defenders were individually stronger than humans, but they were not prepared for opponents who fought with such brutal efficiency. Back in space, the battle was turning into a massacre. The Krex bioships were designed to fight other civilized species who followed established rules of warfare. They were not designed to fight beings who had evolved on a world where every day was a struggle for survival. War leader Nexel watched in horror as his screening force was systematically destroyed. In less than 5 minutes, 11 of his 12 bioships were either destroyed or so badly damaged they could no longer fight. The 12th was trying to flee back to the main fleet. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "These Deathworlders have primitive technology." His science officer, still trying to process the sensor data, looked up with fear in his compound eyes. "War leader, their weapons are primitive, but they use them in ways we never considered. They don't fight to disable enemies. They fight to kill them as quickly and efficiently as possible." The surviving Krex bioship limped back to the main fleet, its hull scarred and its crew traumatized. Subcommander Thackerus was barely alive, his exoskeleton cracked from combat injuries. "Report," Nexel demanded. Thackerus struggled to speak. "The Deathworlders, ... They fight like the ancient demons from our mythology. They show no mercy. They take pleasure in causing pain. And their weapons." He shuddered. "They used their own ships as weapons. When one of their vessels was damaged, they rammed it into our bioship while the crew escaped to other vessels." Nexel felt something he had not experienced in decades. Of conquest, fear, impossible. No civilized species would sacrifice their own ships. War leader Thackerus whispered, "I don't think these humans are civilized at all." On the surface of Vecha Prime, the Zilani watched the distant flashes of battle in their night sky. They had given up hope days ago, accepting their fate with the quiet dignity of their species. But now, something impossible was happening. Someone was fighting the Krex. Someone was winning. Ambassador Kethfer, the same Zilani who had sent the original distress call, stood on the balcony of their capital, city's highest tower. His large, dark eyes reflected the light of explosions happening in orbit. "Who are they?" asked his aide. "A younger Zilani named Veltar." "I don't know," Kethfer replied. "But they heard our call. Someone in this vast universe heard us crying for help, and they came." In space, Captain Carter opened a communication channel to the entire Krex fleet. His voice was calm and cold as he delivered humanity's first official message to a hostile alien species. "Attention, Krex forces. This is Captain Ben Carter of the Terran vessel Retribution. You have attacked a peaceful world that asked for our protection. You have made a mistake. We are humans, come from a world that has been trying to kill us since the day we first drew breath. We learned to survive by being better at violence than anything else we encountered." Carter paused, letting his words sink in. "You wanted to enslave a species that couldn't fight back. That was your first mistake. Your second mistake was doing it where humans could hear about it. You now have 2 choices. Leave this system immediately, or learn exactly why our homeworld is classified as a Class 12 death world. The Krex fleet hung in space, uncertain for the first time in their history. They had expected an easy conquest of a defenseless world. Instead, they had encountered something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. Humans who had come to fight. The age of galactic innocence was ending. The Deathworlders had announced their presence to the universe, and they had done it with fire and fury that left no doubt about their intentions. The Zilani would not die alone. They had guardians now, and those guardians had teeth. War Leader Nexel stared at the communication screen for several minutes after Captain Carter's transmission ended. Around him, his bridge crew waited nervously for orders. The Grex had never encountered a species that spoke to them with such casual confidence about violence. Analysis Nexel demanded from his tactical officers. War Leader, his chief science officer, replied hesitantly. The Deathworlders destroyed our screening force in 4 minutes and 37 seconds. Their weapons appear primitive, but they use them with devastating effectiveness. Clicked angrily. They are bluffing. No species with such small ships could threaten our main battle fleet. Send War Commander Zilak with the 3rd Attack Wing. 40 bioships should be more than enough to crush these upstarts. What Nexel didn't understand was that humans had been studying Krex tactics for months, using long-range sensors and intelligence gathered from various sources. Admiral Morrison's staff had analyzed every recorded Krex battle and identified the weaknesses in their bioship technology. Captain Carter received the deployment orders from Admiral Morrison, who had just arrived in the system with the main human battle fleet. 20 additional ships had joined the fight, including the assault carrier Freedom with its full marine complement. Ben, Admiral Morrison said over the secure channel, the Zilani capital city is taking heavy bombardment. We need boots on the ground to establish a safe zone for civilians. Carter nodded. Understood, Admiral. I'll coordinate with Colonel Murphy's Marines. The human dropships launched from the Freedom while the orbital battle raged overhead. Weren't the sleek atmospheric craft favored by most galactic civilizations? They were flying bunkers, designed to survive heavy ground fire and deliver troops into hostile environments. Colonel Ryan Murphy strapped himself into his command chair as his dropship entered Disha Prime's atmosphere. Around him, 300 Marines prepared for combat. These were volunteers from Earth's most elite units, soldiers who had trained specifically for alien combat scenarios. Listen up, Murphy announced over the comm system. The Zilani are peaceful. People who've never seen real warfare. They're going to be scared and confused. Our job is to protect them and show these Krex bugs that humans don't abandon their friends. The dropship screamed through the atmosphere under intense fire from Krex ground positions. Plasma bolts and bioorganic missiles exploded around them, but the heavily armored craft pushed through the defensive fire like meteors falling from heaven. Private Dana Clark watched through her dropship's viewport as the Zilani capital city came into view. The alien architecture was beautiful, with flowing spires and crystal domes that seemed to grow from the ground like flowers. But Krex ground forces had already established positions throughout the city, and smoke rose from damaged buildings. Seconds to touchdown, the pilot announced. Remember, the gravity here is about 20% lighter than Earth normal. Don't overjump your cover. The dropships landed in the city's central plaza with bone-jarring impacts. The loading ramps dropped, and the Marines poured out into an alien world under siege. The air smelled different. It's filled with strange pollens and the acrid smoke of energy weapons. Murphy immediately began establishing a defensive perimeter around the plaza. His Marines moved with practiced efficiency, setting up heavy weapons positions and creating overlapping fields of fire. The Zilani civilians, who had been hiding in nearby buildings, stared in amazement at these strange new warriors. The Krex ground forces responded quickly to the human landing. Squads of insectoid warriors advanced through the streets, their katanas, armor gleaming in the alien sunlight. They were individually stronger than humans and armed with bioweapons that could adapt to different combat situations. But they had never fought humans before. Sergeant First Class Tony Martinez led his squad. Through the narrow streets between Zilani buildings, his men moved in a tactical formation that maximized their firepower while minimizing their exposure to enemy weapons. Contact front, his point man whispered over the radio. 6 Krex warriors advancing down the main street. Martinez studied. The enemy through his weapon scope. The Krex moved with the confidence of a species that had never been seriously challenged in ground combat. That was about to change. Weapons free, Martinez ordered. Light them up. The human weapons opened. Fire simultaneously. Instead of the energy weapons favored by most galactic species, the Marines carried projectile weapons that fired chemically propelled rounds at high velocity. The Krex armor was designed to dissipate energy attacks, not stop physical projectiles. First Krex warrior went down immediately, his exoskeleton cracked by multiple rifle rounds. The others tried to take cover, but they were not prepared for the sustained rate of fire that human weapons could maintain. Private Clark flanked around the enemy position while her squadmates kept the Krex pinned down. When she reached optimal position, she triggered a fragmentation grenade that filled the street with deadly metal fragments. The engagement lasted less than 2 minutes. 6 Krex warriors, each one capable of defeating multiple soldiers from most galactic species, were eliminated by a single human squad. "This is too easy," Clark commented as she checked the alien bodies for intelligence. "Don't get cocky," Martinez warned. "These bugs learn fast. The next group will be ready for our tactics." He was right. As word of the human fighting methods spread through the Krex ground forces, they began adapting their approach. Instead of direct assaults, they started using their bioweapons' ability to change configuration during battle, but the humans adapted faster. When the Krex began using long-range bioprojectile weapons, the Marines called in artillery support from their dropships. When the aliens tried tunnel attacks through the city's underground systems, human combat engineers sealed the tunnels with explosive charges. Most importantly, the humans did something that no civilized galactic species would consider. They enjoyed the fight. Private First Class Bobby Chen found himself face-to-face with a Krex warrior in hand-to-hand combat when both their weapons jammed simultaneously. The alien was larger and stronger, the razor-sharp claws that could slice through most materials. But Chen had grown up in the urban combat zones of Earth, where survival meant being tougher and meaner than anything trying to kill you. When the icy Krex warrior lunged at him with its claws extended, Chen sidestepped and drove his combat knife in two. A joint in the creature's exoskeleton, the Krex warrior screamed in pain and surprise. It had never encountered an enemy that seemed to actually enjoy close combat. In space, the main battle between the human and Krex fleets was reaching its climax. Admiral Morrison had brought humanity's most powerful warships into the system, including the battlecruiser Montana and her sister ships. These vessels were larger than the earlier human ships, built like flying fortresses with enough firepower to level entire cities, but more importantly, they were crewed by humans who understood that sometimes the only way to preserve peace was to be better at war than anyone else. War Commander Zillock led his 40 bioships against the human fleet with complete confidence. His vessels outnumbered the humans 2-1, and each one was larger than their biggest ship. The confidence lasted exactly 7 minutes. The human ships fought like nothing Zillock had ever encountered. When the heavy cruiser Sacramento took critical damage to her engines, Captain Foster didn't try to withdraw for repairs. Instead, she rammed her ship into a Krex bioship while her crew evacuated to other vessels. "They're using their own ships as weapons," Zillock reported to Nexel in disbelief. "What kind of species sacrifices their own vessels?" The answer came from Commander Katie Walsh, whose destroyer squadron had been waiting in ambush behind Deschay's Prime's largest moon. Her ship struck the Krex rear formations like sharks attacking a school of fish. "It's a kind of species that evolved on a world where everything wants to kill them," Walsh announced over an open channel. "The kind that learned to survive by being more dangerous than their environment." The Krex bioships began falling back toward their staging areas, their regenerative capabilities overwhelmed by the sustained human assault. Nexel watched in horror as his seemingly invincible fleet was systematically destroyed by creatures from a world that most civilized species considered uninhabitable. On the surface of Decha Prime, Colonel Murphy received word that the orbital battle was turning in humanity's favor. His Marines had successfully established a safe zone around the capital city, and Krek's ground forces were retreating to their landing sites. Ambassador Kethver approached Murphy's command post with several other Zilani officials. The peaceful aliens looked at the human colonel with a mixture of gratitude and amazement. Colonel Murphy, Kethver said in carefully pronounced Standard Galactic, "We cannot thank you enough for what you have done, but we must ask. Why did you come? Why did your people risk their lives for strangers?" Murphy looked up from his tactical displays and studied the Zilani ambassador. The alien's large, dark eyes held wisdom and sadness, but also hope that hadn't been there when the humans first arrived. Ambassador Murphy replied, "Where we come from, nobody fights alone. When peaceful people call for help, humans answer. It's just who we are." 3 weeks after the Battle of Vesha Prime, representatives from across the galaxy gathered in the rebuilt council chambers on Nexus Station. The emergency session had been called to address what many were calling the most significant shift. In galactic politics in over 1,000 years, the humans had done the impossible. They had defeated the Krek's dominion in open warfare, something that major galactic powers had never managed to accomplish. More importantly, they had done it to protect a species they had never met before, asking for nothing in return. Ambassador Lisa Grant walked through the corridors of Nexus Station with a small security detail of human Marines. Other species moved aside as she passed, some out of respect, others out of fear. Word of human fighting capabilities had spread throughout the galaxy faster than light communication. The council chamber itself had been expanded to accommodate new attendees. For the first time in galactic history, representatives from dozens of smaller, previously unprotected worlds had requested permission to attend a council session. They all wanted to hear what the humans had to say. Senior Counselor Vexty called the session to order. The ancient Altari looked older than his usual centuries, worn down by the implications of recent events. "Fellow representatives," he began, "we are here to discuss the actions of the human species and their impact on galactic security." A murmur ran through the assembly. Some species were openly supportive of humanity's intervention. Others, particularly those with their own aggressive tendencies, were concerned about the precedent it set. Ambassador Kelton from the Centauri Republic stood first. The humans acted without authorization from this council. They deployed military forces across sovereign space and engaged in warfare that could have escalated into a galaxy-wide conflict. Lisa Grant remained seated, her expression calm. Had expected this criticism and was prepared for it. General Thorne of the Altera Federation stood next. "With respect to my colleague from Centauri, the humans did what the rest of us could not. They saved an entire civilization from extinction. Perhaps we should be asking ourselves why we were unable to respond when peaceful people called for help." The debate that followed revealed deep divisions within the galactic community. The established powers were uncomfortable with humanity's demonstration of military capability. The smaller, more vulnerable species saw the humans as potential protectors. Ambassador Yixday from the Healer Coalition spoke with obvious emotion. "For centuries, we have watched aggressive species prey upon the peaceful. We have told ourselves that we could not interfere, that the risks were too great. The humans have shown us that our excuses were simply cowardice disguised as wisdom." When the formal speeches were finished, Senior Counselor Vexday recognized Ambassador Grant. The council would hear from the human representative. Lisa stood and walked to the center of the chamber. She moved with the same calm confidence that had marked all human interactions with the galactic community. But now there was something else in her manner. There was the quiet strength of someone whose species had just proven they were not to be underestimated. "Fellow representatives," Lisa began, "humanity did not seek conflict with the Krek's dominion. We responded to a cry for help from people who faced extinction. That is what civilized beings do for each other." She paused, letting her words sink. "And before continuing, for the past several decades, my species has been observing galactic civilization. We have studied your histories, your cultures, your strengths and weaknesses. What we discovered concerned us greatly. Lisa activated a holographic display that showed galactic territorial maps from the past century. Red areas indicated regions where aggressive species had conquered or destroyed peaceful civilizations. The galaxy has a problem, she continued. Predator species like the Krex, the Saurian Empire, and the Void Hunters consistently attack peaceful worlds because they know no one will stop them. The major powers are always too busy, too distant, or too concerned with their own interests to intervene. Ambassador Kelton shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The Centauri Republic had indeed ignored several requests for assistance over the years, citing strategic concerns. Meanwhile, Lisa said, innocent species die because the galaxy has forgotten that sometimes peace can only be preserved through strength. She changed the display to show human space and the positioning of their hidden fleets. Humanity proposes a solution. We will establish rapid response fleets throughout the galaxy, positioned to assist any species facing extinction or enslavement. These fleets will be staffed by volunteers from military-capable species and will operate under human command. The chamber erupted in concerned voices. Some delegates were outraged at the suggestion that humans should command galactic military forces. Others were intrigued by the possibility of actual protection for vulnerable worlds. Senior Counselor Vextai called for order. When the chamber quieted, he addressed Lisa directly. Ambassador Grant, what you propose would fundamentally alter the balance of galactic power. Many species would view human-commanded fleets as a threat to their sovereignty. Lisa nodded. Understand the concern, Counselor. Consider the alternative. It's how many more species like the Zilani will face extinction while we debate sovereignty and jurisdiction. Before anyone could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed as priority communications flooded the chamber systems. A holographic image appeared above the council floor, showing the face of a reptilian being with cold, intelligent eyes. The creature spoke in the harsh, guttural language of the Saurian Empire. This is War Master Korath of the Saurian Fourth Fleet, the image declared. We have received reports of your new Deathworld allies and their victory over the pathetic Krex. We are not impressed. The War Master's image shifted to show massive Saurian warships surrounding a peaceful world covered in crystal formations. Crystal builders of Vega Colony have 3 hours to surrender unconditionally, or we will demonstrate what real military power looks like. We suggest your human friends stay out of Saurian business if they value their lives. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. The Saurians had just issued a direct challenge to humanity while threatening another innocent species. Lisa Grant smiled grimly and activated her personal communicator. Admiral Morrison, did you monitor that transmission? Morrison's voice came through clearly, calm, and professional. Yes, Ambassador. We've been tracking Saurian fleet movements for the past week. Terran Rapid Response Fleet is already en route to Vega Colony. The council members looked at each other in amazement. The humans had been preparing for this possibility even before the current crisis began, Admiral Lisa continued. What is your estimated arrival time? 36 minutes, Ambassador. The Saurians picked the wrong species to threaten. Senior Counselor Vextai leaned forward. Ambassador Grant, how is it possible for your ships to respond so quickly? Lisa turned to address the entire assembly. Because we learned from the Shaprime, humanity has positioned response fleets throughout the galaxy, ready to assist any peaceful species that calls for help. We're not asking for permission anymore. We're telling you how things are going to work from now on. She activated another display, showing human fleet positions throughout galactic space. Dozens of ship icons appeared on the map, revealing the true scope of humanity's military deployment. The age of unchallenged aggression is over, Lisa announced. Predator species can no longer attack peaceful worlds without consequences. They will face humanity, and they will learn what happens when Deathworld species decide to protect their friends. Ambassador Thalavon from the Outer Rim Trading Consortium spoke up. What about species that don't want human protection? About our sovereignty? Lisa's expression softened slightly. Any species that can defend itself is welcome to do so. Any species that doesn't want human assistance can decline it. But any species that attacks peaceful worlds will discover that humans have very long memories and very little patience for bullies. As if to emphasize her point, another transmission arrived from the Vega system. Captain Ben Carter's face appeared. On the display, his ship's bridge visible behind him. Says Captain Carter to Nexus Station. The Saurian fleet has been engaged and is retreating. Vega colony is secure. No human casualties reported. The transmission included tactical footage of the battle. The Saurian warships, massive and heavily armed, were no match for human tactics and determination. The crystal builders of Vega colony were safe. War Master Korath's face appeared once more on the communication system. But this time his expression was very different. The arrogant confidence was gone, replaced by shock and fear. "This is impossible," he snarled. "The Saurian Empire will not tolerate this interference." Captain Carter's response was broadcast to the entire galaxy. "War Master, you tried to destroy innocent people. That was your first mistake. Your second mistake was thinking humans would allow it. If your empire wants to continue this discussion, we'll be happy to teach you the same lesson we taught the Cricks." The Saurian transmission cut off abruptly.